Get ready to get sticky. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sticky Situations. I'm your host, Rachel, and I'm really happy you guys decided to come back because you should, because this is going to be really funny. So, also, while you're at it, follow us on Instagram at Sticky Situations Pod. And you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Remember to subscribe, follow, whatever platform you're listening on. We're on all of them, I think. I don't really know how it works, but, I'm pretty sure. So, at least on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. What other platforms do people really use? But whatever. Anyway, this week, I'm joined by my friend Shaina. So, get excited for a guest.
Hi, guys.
Like I promised, and she's not just any guest. She's, probably one of my friends with the most dating stories. Also...
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't know. In my case, it's a good thing because that gives us content. Also, she's dated all of our friends.
Hey! That's shade.
It's not really shade. It's just, it's just funny. She's like, oh, yeah, I went out with him. And I'm like, wait, how are you, best friends with him now? But it's funny. So it does show that even if you go on a bad date, one time before Shaina and I were really good friends, we were just, talking about dating stories. And she told me this story. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty weird. And then a bunch of us were together later on, months later. And this story came up. And one of our friends was there. And I found out that it was about our friend, and he's, one of our pretty good friends. So I just thought it was really funny. So, obviously, Shaina had to be one of my first guests because she just has great stories. So, welcome. Everyone give a welcome to Shaina.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me, or should I not be thankful to be here? I guess it depends what comes up.
Every guest should always be thankful to be here. Also, just letting you guys know, I came to Shaina to record. So when she said, thanks for having me here, I am literally at her apartment. So she's having me here. So Shaina, thank you for recording with me.
Of course.
I only do it for special people. But anyway, Shaina, tell our listeners a little bit about you. I mean, not too much information, age range, relationship status, where you live.
So I live in New York City. I've lived here for about 6-ish years now. I'm in my mid-20s, I guess you can say. And then most people think I look like I'm in high school.
But... Oh, same girl, same. But, it's going to be great when we're, 50 and people think we're in our 30s. So that's what I just try to remember.
Well, up until recently, people thought my grandma was my mother and my mother was my sister, so...
See, that's good. That means you have good genes.
One could hope, right?
I met her mom. Her mom looks very young. So it's good. Men who are listening who might be eligible suitors for her, just letting you know, she's gonna age well. So
yeah, that's why I get hit on by young people, which a 21-year-old. Really awkward when you're much older and neither of you realize how old the other is.
I find it flattering.
Yes, but it was awkward, and I'll tell you why soon. But yeah, and I am single. I guess if that's my relationship status.
Eligible men. As always, yes, this podcast is meant to tell funny stories, but also, who says we can't facilitate? So, if anyone after listening is like, oh my god, this girl has such a great personality, please reach out. You can DM me at Sticky Situations Pod on Instagram, or send me an email at stickysituationspod@gmail.com.
So, Rachel's obsessed with becoming a shotgun. So,
oh my god, I really do want to be. So, if this is my platform to do so, please, by all means.
Right. Or in general, if you just want to be set up, reach out to her. She talks about a million different ways or sites or different apps that she wants to create to...
yeah, I don't know that many good guys, though. So that's my problem. That's probably why I'm still single. Yeah. Guys, do better. Be better.
And we're going to tell you right now soon about what not to do.
Yeah, exactly. So, Shaina, should we just get into it?
Sure.
Okay, Shaina, can you tell me, should we start off with the good or the bad? What do we think?
I guess start with the bad, because it will be nice to get to the good things at the end.
You want to start with the bad, because then we just end on a positive note. Although, are any of these notes positive because we're still single, so at the end of the day, all of our stories are pretty much bad.
Right.
Well, even the good ones turn out bad. Even
I
if
don't
they're
know.
good.
I think about some of the guys that I've dated that ended on a positive note or good dates that I've been
Well, yeah,
on.
you're best friends with all of them.
I'm not best friends with all of them. Even though one of my exes, like, also for Rachel's point, when she says best friends with them, like, maybe I went on, like, a couple of dates. I didn't date any of these guys seriously, except one of my actual exes, like, a boyfriend, did invite me to his wedding, which I did not go to, and also was really happy I didn't have to decline because another one of my friends was getting married the same day, and he went up to the guy and said that she's not coming to your wedding, she's coming to mine, which was hilarious, just in so many levels, but it was really funny and lucky, so I didn't have to be awkward and be like, no, I don't want to come to your wedding. And I was also invited to the party for his child's birth.
That's so weird.
We have all the same friends.
Okay, so I guess that makes more sense if you have all the same friends. I don't know. I don't want to be invited to an ex's wedding. Like, don't even tell me you're getting married. Like, I just don't want to know. Out of sight, out of mind. If we did it, like, seriously. Okay, so, Shaina, tell me about your worst date.
Worst date or worst states? Because there's a few stories worth mentioning.
Whatever you want to tell me.
Okay, so
my listeners, these listeners want to know, like, the juicier the better. And by juicy, I just mean, like, funny and entertaining.
Okay, this is probably funny for everyone else than me who was on the date, but years ago, I went out with this guy who we met a few times, like, because we have mutual friends in common, and he asked me out, and I was like, okay, I'll go out with him, and we made plans to meet at a restaurant, which this restaurant was like a dairy restaurant, but also had like a bakery / a lot of desserts. So he made it very clear before the date that we were going to be meeting just for desserts. Totally fine. So I knew to eat dinner beforehand and keep it light and dairy. And I was running like maybe like 5 to 10 minutes late. I get to the restaurant. He is sitting and eating dinner.
That's so weird.
Not even the worst part of the date. So I sit down while he's eating, say hello, make pleasantries, feeling very awkward, and basically tells me I need to order food, which I am not hungry because I ate dinner. And I basically it was like making me very uncomfortable that I had to order something. So I got like a light salad or something because I really just wasn't hungry. This restaurant is like set up that there's like seats in 2 different parts. So like if you go to the restroom, you could see the other half of the seats. And I'm like very awkward and uncomfortable in this state. And of course I get up to use the bathroom. And I see my friends in the restaurant in the back that didn't see me, basically telling them to save me because it gets worse. So this guy decides to tell me like a story, how he used to be a swimmer, and decides to go into detail about a time that he was in the swim meet that he had to go to the bathroom. In detail.
Oh my god.
And how he essentially pooped his pants.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good first date story.
First date story?
I mean, like, a story to tell on a first date. Like
I thought you meant when I'm saying no.
No, like, pooping your pants. Like, it depends on the context.
It wasn't funny at all.
Yeah. You gotta read the room then. Like,
my friends did not try to come save me, which was just very unfortunate.
That's so rude. If I had been there, I would come save you.
Yeah, the best part about having a roommate is you tell them ahead of time if you're doing a Zoom date. And then you basically, like I had this where I told my roommate that I had a date and like I may need her to save me. And I did. So I texted my roommate.
Oh, yeah.
And
always
she came into the room, made up some sort of emergency in the apartment. Best save.
Yeah, I always send my location to my friends when I go on a first date. Actually, this past week, I went on a first date, and there were some things, maybe I'll get into it this episode, maybe a different episode, but I sent my location to probably 12 friends, and I said, if I text you SOS, call me with an emergency to get me out of this date, and if I text you 911, call the police and give them my location.
Right, but the only thing is, though, Rachel, you didn't tell me where you were going.
Yeah, but you have my location.
Yeah, but, like, how do I know if you're being taken somewhere, like, not where you're supposed to go?
Well, I met him at the place.
Right, but I didn't know where you were going, so for all
I thought I had
were...
told you. Yeah, and then other friends were like, also, you didn't tell us who this guy is. Like, you should have sent the picture or the name. So, but whatever. Okay, you live and you learn. Next time I go on a first date and I'm afraid of being murdered, I'll do it differently. But anyway, sorry, continue with your story.
Well, those were 2 separate stories. I think I was done with that story. I do have a I don't know if you can call it a worst date story, but a funny story that has like two parts to it. Years ago, when I was still kind of living at home, went out with a guy. I think it was the first or second date. We didn't go out that much longer. At this time, since I was very newly starting to date and I was really young, my dad thought it would be really funny. And the first few dates I went on, he would hand me a 20 and he would say, just in case the guy leaves you in a ditch. And since I lived at home, he would always see me when I came home to kind of see how I was doing from the dates. So
did you get to keep the money after?
Yeah, I think that's why my dad ended up stopped giving me 20s because he realized I was pocketing the cash. It was great. Used it for
You should have been like, oh, actually, I had to use it on the date. Which, men, you need to pay for dates. Like, don't be expecting girls to pay on a first date, second date, maybe third date. But, we'll get there. That also came up during my date this past week, but...
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, the guy picks me up and takes me to a Starbucks. Not a Starbucks in my town. Not a Starbucks in the next town. But, a Starbucks, 25 minutes away. Which, okay. And this was a Starbucks that had, stairs to a second level. We were there probably up until closing because it was also late by the time we got there, which is fine. And I got up. They were, starting to close up, and I got up to use the restroom before we left. I didn't see that the stairs were wet, and I slid down the stairs. Now, everyone came over to see how I was. So did the guy. It was really, really awkward. And I go home, and I'm covered in bruises. My whole elbows and my arms and my shoulders and my back are, covered in bruises. And I get home, and, my dad sees my arms when I, change. And he's like, what did this guy, do to you? I was like, I explained the situation. My dad's like, okay, that's, very awkward, but fine. He wasn't, going to kill anyone. Fast forward to years later. I'm on a second date with the guy. The guy was, interesting. He took me, a really fancy restaurant for, both dates. And, I feel in the the beginning of the second date or in the middle, we kind of knew it wasn't going anywhere. No. To guys and to girls. When you start talking about bad date stories on a date, it means usually that the person doesn't want to go out with you anymore and they really just have nothing to talk about. At least in my case, that's usually when it comes up. So we start telling stories, and I say this story of an awkward situation that happened to me, and he goes, you're that girl. This was a friend of his, and apparently this story was broadcasted to all the friends. So, ladies and gentlemen, be careful on who you tell what, because it probably will come back.
Yeah, actually, a guy I went out with told me a bad date story. We actually dated for a while, so it wasn't a bad situation wherein he told me the story, but he told me the story, and I'm like, wait, I know this story, but I know from the other perspective, because it was my former roommate. I won't tell the story now.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I was like, wait, and he's like, oh, I shouldn't, let you know that he had told me that he went out with my former roommate, who, I'm not really in touch with anymore, but he, mentioned it. I don't remember how he knew that we were. He's like, just letting you know, I went on, 2 dates with this girl. I'm like, cool, whatever, I don't care. And then he told me a story, and I just connected so many dots. I'm like, oh my God, it was her! And he's like, yeah, that's, really impressive that you knew that. I'm like, yeah.
Girls and guys talk. But
Yeah.
also, to go back to when it's, the first, 3 dates when you're talking about bad dating stories, then it's usually not a good sign. But if you're, seeing someone and it's a little bit further, then, it makes sense
Yeah,
to bring
I
it
don't
up.
remember when he told me, but it came up. Whatever, we went out for a little while.
But now, since there's 2 parts to the story, I do tell it a lot because it just became funnier. Because honestly, falling down the stairs, okay, it's, awkward. Is it really that funny? Being told you're that girl is more funny.
Yeah, no, it is funny.
I don't know if I should be proud or not that
I wonder how many that girl stories that I'm a part of. Do you ever... I mean, I know you know that one, but, I kind of wonder how many guys have told their friends stories about me.
The more people you date, the more there will be stories about you.
I feel like there's a bunch. Nothing... I don't think I've ever done anything bad
Rachel,
or weird on a date,
You
though.
tell guys that you're bringing your mace with you.
Yeah, that's true.
You are that girl to all of them.
Yeah, the taser, and I'm sending all my friends that...
When the guys are going sitting and they're saying, what's the weirdest thing a girl said to you on a date? Oh, she brought her taser along and she sent her location out to people. You are that girl, Rachel. You just don't know it.
Oh, I'm fine being that girl. Now I'm that girl with the podcast, too. Which, will I tell guys who I date about? the podcast? Probably.
Maybe not right away.
Oh, I was gonna put it on my like dating app profiles.
Well, you don't want the guys to think that you're just going out with them for material.
Sometimes I am.
I know.
I think
you don't want them to know.
I think these days, unless it's like a really cool guy who I meet in person or a friend sets it up, most dates I'm going on from an app is probably just to get more material. But don't worry, you could still go out with me. You might be famous one day. But I won't say your name.
Famous or infamous?
It depends if the date's good or not. I mean, or you could be my future husband. You never know. If you're my future husband, I probably won't talk about you on this podcast.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't think it's as fun to talk about good dates.
I guess that would be a good segue into a few good date stories, but I do have one more bad date story I wanted to share.
Hit us with your bad date story, and then we can talk about some good ones to give our listeners a little bit of hope, or just be like, okay, even though these girls go on bad dates, sometimes they have good dates.
Yeah.
Because I probably won't tell you about good date stories. Except in my intro episode where I did tell you about a couple good date stories. But yeah, you probably won't hear anymore because they're just boring. At least mine are boring. My good dates are boring. But some people might have not boring good date stories.
Maybe. So, years ago, I went out with this guy. I think we were kind of friends before, so I don't remember if this was like the first official date or the second date. And like we were young. So like I don't know how much he's dated before, what he knew or didn't know. And we go to this like nice restaurant, nice dish, and like it's winter time, so we're getting taken to our table, and all of a sudden he starts to take off my coat for me. And I get so startled that I knock off all the silverware off the table.
I should also explain to you guys, I know most of you know that I'm modern Orthodox, and most of my friends who I will be talking to are also modern Orthodox, so we're dating within the modern Orthodox Jewish circles. So within modern Orthodoxy, some people, there's a spectrum of what people do and what people don't do, but there is the rule called Shomer Nagia, where members of the opposite gender do not touch before marriage. So sometimes it's assumed that, like, I don't know, I go by the rule that, like, I'm never going to initiate, like, unless I know for sure that the guy isn't Shomer Nagia, I'm never going to initiate any touching. I kind of wait to see, like, if he does or if it comes up in conversation. But that's why it's just, like, kind of weird to automatic, like, not everybody goes by that assumption, but everyone kind of tiptoes around it until you know.
Well, yeah, and if I wasn't set up with this person, but especially if you are set up by mutual friends or if you use a matchmaker, usually you kind of, like, know not to. But, like, 2 reasons why it was strange. First off, it was behind me, so I didn't notice what was going on. And secondly, it's bad, though, but Chevrolet is really dead, guys. So, like, no one really does this anyway. Like, my friends who, like, Jewish, non-Jewish, like, this doesn't happen. Good guys like this, like, to do things like this, it isn't so common. Like, I literally was so mad about a guy I had to go out with who picked me up from, this is a separate story, who picked me up from my parents' house and refused to come to the door. I didn't want to go out with him. I didn't want to go. He was so lazy, he couldn't walk the 2 steps from his car to my door to help me to the car. Like, maybe that's, like, dumb of me, maybe not. Now that I live in the city, I don't want guys to know where I live. Like, maybe when I was young, it was, like, so naive.
I don't know. Maybe he didn't want to meet your parents. I don't know.
But, like, when I was young, I, like, had, like, so many, like, principles. But, like, nowadays, I'm like, I don't want you to take me home. I don't want you to know where I live. I don't know if you are normal.
Yeah, that's why I bring my taser and send all my friends my location. Like, girls, you never know what's going to happen. And I watch a lot of TikTok, and a lot of bad things happen to people. And, like, you shouldn't go into dates thinking, like, oh, something bad's going to happen. But you always need to stay prepared for, like, if, God forbid, a bad situation does happen, you can protect yourself or have a way of getting out of it. So...
Yeah, and they invented so many things, not just for dates, but, like, in bars. Like, there are straws that change colors. If
nail
people
polish.
Put something in your drink, nail polish. So there's so many ways to protect yourself.
Yeah.
But, anyway, so this guy, once I was so startled, basically was apologized, he didn't know, and then he proceeded to tell me that he hasn't really dated so much, and he didn't actually know it was something he should or shouldn't do. And I said, it's a really nice thing to do, but you should just, like, make sure that, like, someone would be okay with it. Fast forward to what Rachel was saying. This is actually a really good friend of mine. We went on, like, 2 or 3 dates, depending who asks. And we became really good friends after. Just, like, mutually didn't work. And we've been friends for years. And he's a really good guy. And, like, he knows I've told people this story. I think he finds it funny. But I also think, like, it's a great... I don't know if I would... like, at the end of the day, if it is a bad story or not. Because it actually shows his great character. Which, guys, pay attention.
Yeah, he's probably, like, one of the best guys I know. Ladies, if you're listening and you want to date him, like...
Just message Rachel.
Yeah, just message me
Jacket guy
at stickysituationspod@gmail.com or on Instagram, stickysituationspod. You can, I would love to set this guy up, so.
And just say that you want to go out with Jacket guy.
Yeah, Jacket guy. He's like one of the best guys I know.
So. Nicest guy. And like, for the girls that are like, oh, you keep saying the word nice, which I know, it's a problem, ladies. No one wants to go out with the nice guy. He is not like, oh, like a quintessential nice guy. He definitely has some quip, has some bite, and is an overall
he's just a
fantastic
great
guy.
Yeah.
Which, segueing to...
I hope he's listening to this so he can see how much we actually like, how highly we think of him.
I think he knows. Like, it's funny. Whenever I talk to my friends, I'm always like, who should we set up? He becomes like the top when everyone's like, we need to set up Jacket guy. Which is,
and he knows that we all are trying to set him up. I tell him all the time, I'm like, I wish I knew a really great girl. I'm always on the lookout for a great girl for you.
I've tried to set him up before. Like, you know,
I had like one idea once, and I'm happy they didn't actually go out. It just didn't work out logistically because I think she's also great, but like I think I wasn't fully aware of what each of them were looking for, so it wouldn't have worked out. But I'm still like very on the lookout.
Yes.
Also, any of my friends, I'm always on the lookout for people.
And I'm on the lookout for Rachel. So, any of you guys want to go out with her and reach out to Sticky Situations. Or you should create a different name or something if people want to go out with you and are too afraid to ask you themselves.
No, I like a bold guy. If you're not bold enough to ask me out, like just DM the podcast. Like, I'm funny. You can tell. But just DM the podcast. You can ask me out. I'll probably put you through a screening because, I had a situation. I had a couple situations this week. Yeah, they were very sticky. But also, like, really, really sticky.
Segueing from bold guys, I don't know if the story I'm about to tell falls into the good or bad category. I guess you guys can decide.
Yeah.
But there was this guy I was, like, friendly with in college. He wasn't, like, part of, like, my friend group. He, like, just kind of, like, you know, we kind of saw each other at, like, events, but, like, we were really close. And he was always, like, a really nice guy. A few months after my breakup, I was at shul, or synagogue, people that don't know, with a few of my friends. And he comes over and he's like, what are you guys doing? Since it was after my breakup, my friends were like, oh, we're trying to find Shaina a guy. Like, she needs, like, a guy to go out with. Like, she's ready. And they were, like, scoping it out. And he very innocently went, what about me? We all laughed. We thought he was just kidding. Fast forward
I like that. I like the bold.
Wait, so fast forward to months later.
Unless it's, like, socially off. But if he's a normal guy.
He is, but, like, he is a little, like, on the, like, nerdy or social, a little, like, cutely socially awkward. So, like, we were, but we all just thought he was, like, doing it because he's also quick. We thought he was just kidding. Months later, we had both graduated, and we haven't spoken, and he reaches out to me that he thinks he has an idea for me. Starts asking me more questions, what I'm looking for, kind of give me more insight. And then he's like, oh, you're going to go, he, like, told me the information of this guy, and I was like, great, I'm going to go out with him. Girls always ask for a photo. I know, like, some people think it's superficial, but, like, I always try to go out if I think there's something. I didn't get a photo at all. And this
also,
guy,
I just want to know what the guy I'm, like, going out with looks like.
Was just not for me at all. And even when he started talking, I knew he was not for me. And, like, you know, guys can always say that they know right away. And I feel like it's okay for a girl to be like, no, I'm not attracted.
I've been out and I know right away. And I usually give people a chance because I really believe, like, attraction grows.
To an extent. There are some people that you see photos of, and you also don't always take one photo, always search them on social media, and you can just tell.
Also, if you're using dating apps or even, like, these profiles, guys are using such old pictures. These guys need to go get... Guys, if you are listening right now, and you are a male, go put on a nice outfit, have your friend take a nice picture of you, and use that.
Or
we need some current nice pictures.
Or if you're at a wedding, just turn to one of your friends and ask them to take a photo. Now, I know that with a grain of salt that a lot of my guy friends' photos are not great or updated. So, like, if I think that there's a semblance that I could be attracted to them, sure. But if the guy, like, really just isn't working for many different reasons, you know, I feel like you have a right to say no, ladies. Guys do it all the time. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
There's nothing superficial or wrong about it. You're allowed to say no based on whatever you want. But anyway, So I go out with this guy and we go on one date, and like besides what he looks like and everything, I knew he was just not for me. Not for me, really nice guy, just really not for me. Personality, just like what we were interested in, wasn't looking. Fine. I tell my friend really nicely, oh, the guy that you set me up isn't for me. He then proceeds to tell me that, oh, why don't we go out? Based on what you were looking for, I think we could be a good match. I was so taken aback because I never thought of him as a romantic interest at all. And I was thoroughly impressed with that because not only is it a bold move, it's gutsy.
Yeah, I like a bold move.
We went out for a while. I ultimately ended it. Just there were things that just like I personally couldn't get past. So, like I just knew it wouldn't work. And that was that. But I always thought that was like really bold. And I tried to set him up like after that. Nothing really worked. He's happily married now. Good for him. But he's like a really nice guy. And it's funny is that because he's such a nice guy, which for a while after that, I didn't go out with nice guys, which is, ladies, you need to find a nice guy at the end of the day. But I actually saw him years later. And it was like, you know, people also change. I know plenty of people who end up with people that they dated years ago. But, like, still wasn't for me. But, like, it was nice to, like, reconnect, if that makes sense. With, like, people you ended on good terms that just, like, you know, Rachel said, there are a lot of my guy friends that I went out with that I'm friends with. But, like, that also has to do with proximity. You live near them. You're more likely to see them. But, like, someone else.
Same social circles.
Yeah, someone else that maybe you went out with that was, like, a really nice person. Or, you know, for whatever reason it didn't work. And it wasn't, like, they did anything wrong. You know, if you don't run in the same circles or you don't live in the same proximity, you're never going to see again. So it is sometimes nice to run into someone you went out with years ago to just kind of see where they're going. And, like, you know, it was so nice to see, like, where their life is. So I'm really happy for him.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think if it's a couple years down the line and I run into either of my two recent relationships, maybe it'll be nice to see them. One, like, I know for sure, like, it would be nice to see him. Like, I wish both of them the best, but, like,
it also could affirm your choices too.
Yeah, that's true too.
So now to, I guess, ladies and gentlemen, you could decide if that's considered a good or bad story, but I'll leave it to you. It's definitely a bold one. But I guess when you're talking about, like, good date stories, it's funny when a lot of my guy friends or even my brothers, when they're dating, asking me, like, what are good, like, dates to go on? Because they feel like guys don't know. Guys, never ask a girl, like, for a first date, like, where do you want to go?
Yeah, no
one wants
my God.
indecision.
Shaina, you're literally segueing me into my story of the week that I just have to tell you guys of what happened. Because I was also told today by a friend that my standards are too high, and I just don't think that's true. So Shaina and audience, you guys can both decide if my standards are too high. So as you guys know, I had 2 relationships back to back where I was treated very, very well. They just both didn't work out. So within that, both got, like, they just treated me well. So now I have these high standards of what I want. And some of them I don't think are that crazy high of standards. Like, if a guy asks me on a first date, I'm going to tell him to come to the neighborhood that works best for me. I expect him to plan the date, and I expect him to pay for the date. I don't think that's so crazy.
Someone told you that's considered high?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think that's high standards. I do think that when people get to a desperate idea of, like, they really just want to, like, meet someone, get married, or be in a relationship, whatever being with someone means to you, that they let their standards go. And I don't know if that's, like, what people were saying. These are people that, like, maybe are single or whatever.
I don't know. I think the person who was saying this to me was telling me I was being inflexible because, okay, I'll tell you what happened. Okay, so here's my story of the week. So this guy and I had been talking from a dating app, and then I went out of town. Like, we were talking for a little bit, and he wanted to go out, but I just didn't have time before I went out of town. And then I was going out of town for, like, a few weeks. So we were talking. Finally, he's like, and he had asked me for a date, like, a few times. And I'm like, yeah, when I come back. So finally we make a plan to go out when I came back. And he had asked me, he's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I hate that question. But I'm like, whatever. I'm like, drinks. And I told him the area that I live in. Because I'm like, I don't want to travel. I don't like traveling for a first date. And I also didn't want him to pick me up because, like, it's a stranger from an app. So I don't, like, really want him to know where I live. Like, you never know from an app. He could be normal. He could be crazy. So I told him, like, the neighborhood, which he is familiar with because he had told me, he's like, oh yeah, I don't know if he used to live around here or one of his friends lived around here, and his other friend lives in an area that is very close to here. So he is very familiar with this area, knows around at least a 20 block radius of where I live, so knows where to choose a bar. We decided on drinks. Fine. So the day before the date, I text him and I'm like, hey, what's the plan? Like, what time and where do you want to meet? So he's like 7:30 and he gives me a name of a bar. So I Googled the bar just to see where it is. And I'm like, hey, this is 40 blocks from my apartment and not really in my neighborhood. I was like, I really just don't want to get back on the train after I already come home from work. Can you pick a place? And I gave him like a 20 block area to pick like a bar. And there are a ton of bars in that area. So not a very hard task. And he's like, oh, like he also kept switching back and forth on like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with the area. And oh, I don't know the area so well. Whatever. So he sends me another place and I Google it. And I'm like, wait, this is not a bar. This is straight up a monument in a park. And I'm like, and it wasn't a bar at a monument. So one of my friends was like, oh yeah, there's a bar in that park. I'm like, no, it's the monument. So I text him, I'm like, this isn't a bar. This is a monument in the park. And he's like, yeah, I thought we would meet up. I'll bring drinks and we chill. And I'm like, no, I am not meeting a stranger in a park that's not very public, like so close to dark. And also like, I'm not drinking drinks that you bring, like, unless it's like an unopened bottle, like you don't know what's going to happen. As we were talking about before, like you don't know. This is a stranger. So then we like keep going back and forth. He's like, it's public there. It's not dark yet. I'm like, why are you pushing for this? I'm like, I'm very uncomfortable by this. And then he's like, if you're so uncomfortable, why don't you come up with a place to go? And I hate that. Because number one, I don't think it's my job to come up with a place. I went out with a guy the week before and like he was really unfamiliar with the area. He's like, do you have any suggestions of places or I can Google it? That's fine. Like maybe I do have suggestions. I could ask friends where they've been out to bars, but it's not like he wasn't like, you plan. I don't like that. I also like, I'm the type, I like a man with a plan. Like a guy who I dated in the past, he texted me, he's like, he's like, this is the name of the bar. He also asked if he could pick me up, which I let him, even though he was a stranger. But it was fine. It turned out fine. And he told me a time. He had a place in mind. It was not far. He was just very considerate of me. And I just think guys should do that on a first date. Not like try to get me to go 40 blocks out. And he had also like already like kind of like showed an annoyance that I wanted him to come to me instead of like meeting somewhere or me coming to him. And I'm like, no, it's a first date. You asked me out, you come to me.
So I will say that in terms of like being inflexible or flexible, that I do agree that the guy should come up with the idea and should pay. Where you're going, I feel like is a toss-up. I feel like it's very situational. I'm happy to meet in multiple places. Like if I'm working, usually like they ask me where I'm going to be, if I'm working from home or working in the office and like what the area is. But I have no problem meeting somewhere else in the city.
I have no problem meeting somewhere else, but it depends on the situation. He was driving in. I prefer to meet near, like, close-ish to my apartment just because, like, I just don't feel like wasting time anymore, like, getting on a train, going to a different neighborhood, trying to find a place. Maybe if I'm coming from work, it's a different thing, but it was also like awkward timing. If it had been like he wanted to meet at 6:30, that's fine. I can stay at work and meet him straight after work. That's very different than saying 7:30 where I have to rush home from work, then like rush there. And also he was driving. So for him to drive an extra 30 blocks is nothing.
Oh, that's very different.
It's very different. He was
driving.
driving. If he was coming from somewhere else in the city and was on a train and all this and that. And yeah, I did go on a date the week before and he was going in the train or an Uber and he's like, can we meet in the middle? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. But he also asked me when I was in a very bad mood and I'm like, whatever. And then I felt bad the next day. I'm like, we can meet. He's like, no, I'll come to you. So like I can be flexible, but also like I think about my past relationships and like one of them would straight up come to pick me up, take me back to close to where he lived, which is not close, then drive me home just to drive back home himself.
But that's a little unrealistic. I had that on a first date where a guy picked me up from Jersey. I got in his car, like we were set up and like by a matchmaker. Or a mutual friend, I don't remember. So he picked me up from Jersey, then drove me back to Jersey to go out in Jersey, and then drove me home. But, like, I don't think you can expect that.
No, I don't expect that on every date, and I appreciated when I was dating this guy, like, that he did that, and I'm like, wow, like, this sets, like, a whole new standard. But it also is not easy for me to get to where he was, and he's like, I'm gonna drive anyways.
Right, once you're driving,
and, like, he was the one who chose, like, to go back to where he was. So, like, this guy that I went on this date with, he knew, like, I knew he was going to drive. And I'm like, you're driving just an extra few minutes is very, like, you to drive an extra few minutes is much better than me to have to get on a train. And I'm like, I just didn't want to get on a train. And I just don't see why that is such a big deal. Especially because I had told him where I wanted to go out. So I was already kind of annoyed with that. And then I was really annoyed that he's making me make the plan. And he didn't, and like the way he phrased it, like, since you're so uncomfortable. So I really almost canceled the date because I'm like, this guy is going to murder me. And then I spoke to a friend who was not Shaina because Shaina told me I should cancel the date. And the friend was like, no, I feel like there's just some miscommunication, some misunderstanding. Like, just go out and see, like, just pick somewhere, like, she gave me a name of a bar. She's like, just go there. Or she gave me a name of a couple bars. She's like, just go to one of these places. It's very public. Send your location. Bring your taser and your pepper spray. And, like, it should be fine. I think it's just miscommunication.
Well, the reason why I said not go out with him is I thought that it was a bad sign at that point with just the way they were fighting through messaging. And, spoiler alert, the date did not go well.
No.
Which...
Okay.
I feel like Rachel needs to be a little bit better at her selection process.
Yeah, no, I should. I'm going through more screening, as I said before. But anyway, so I get to the date. I always show up to dates 5 minutes late because I like the guy to be there first.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
So, guys, if you're listening to this and you want to go out with Rachel, come 10 minutes late.
No, I like when he's there first. And, like, if I'm actually running more than 5 minutes late, I'll text, and there's, like, a reason behind it. If he's coming to pick me up, like, I'll be down on time. Like, I
don't purposely show up places late.
No,
I
purposely try to show up 3 to 5 minutes late because I want him to already be there, and I don't want to have to be, like, waiting around. So I show up 5 minutes late. He is not there. So I text him, I'm like, and he had texted me before. Like, I knew I wasn't getting stood up because he had texted me, like, 15, 20 minutes earlier and saying, hey, I'm almost there. I was like, cool. So I text him that I'm there, and he's like, oh, I'm looking for parking still. And I'm like, okay, which is fine, like, kind of understandable. But, like, at some point I was just like, I'm getting a table because this bar is going to fill up. He, like, made me wait for, like, 20 minutes.
Sometimes it's hard to find parking.
Like, I understand that it's hard to find parking, but I've also had guys, like, pay for a lot when they can't find parking. Or leave an extra cushion for time to find parking. I'm like, if you knew it was going to be hard to find parking, why didn't you tell me 8 o'clock instead of 7:30? Like, I get it. That is a circumstance that you can't really help. But I only got more annoyed about that because I was already annoyed. So I'm there. I'm sitting at the table. Then he comes, and he's like, yeah, I parked in front of the hydrant. which was right outside. He's like, it's a good thing you got a table outside. Now I can watch my car. Because he parked in front of a hydrant. And I'm like, okay. So, like, the whole time, he just kept looking at his car. Fine. So, the waitress comes to take our order. And we give our drink orders. And she's like, oh, I need a card to put on the tab. And so, he was like, oh, I forgot my card in the car. At this point, I am so... And, like, listen. I am an understanding person. I'm pretty understanding if it's, like, one thing. But this was already, like, the 5th strike. So I just, like, I give him a death glare. And then I look at the waitress, and she is trying not to laugh at this. And I just look at him, and I go, I don't pay on a first date. And I'm like, I don't pay on a first date. I don't pay on a second date. I probably won't pay on a third date. I don't pay on a first date.
What was his response?
He's like, my card's in the car. I have Apple Pay, all this.
He can go to the car.
Like, he didn't get up to go to the car.
If you were paying attention to the story, his car is right outside.
It was right there. So I gave my card, and I just, like, was so annoyed. And he's like, and he kept making jokes about it. He's like, oh, yeah, I should order all this and that because it's on your card. And I'm like, it's not funny at this point. Like,
they didn't take Apple Pay?
They did. He paid at the end. But, like, he's, like, making jokes. And he did go to get his card. And then when he came back from getting his card, he was like, I can't believe you trust... He's like, see, you trusted me to go and get my card and come back. And I'm like, if you would have left, I just would have paid and, like, gone home. And I'm out, like, $20-$30 it was for drinks. Like...
It's not a big deal.
It's not that big of a deal. I just would have gone home. Like, it's not that impressive that you came back. Like, it's not that funny, and it's not that impressive. Like, you're already, like... I don't know. I was just really annoyed on the date, and I haven't heard from him since. I'm not reaching out. Yeah, which also I don't like. I don't like the whole ghosting thing, and, like, I should reach out and be like, yeah, it's not a match. But, like, I kind of like when the guy reaches out. Like, even if a guy... Like, guys, even if you're not interested in the girl, just, like, tell her. You don't have to go on a second date.
Because you never know who they know. Because if you ghost someone, for all you know, they'll come back into your life.
Exactly.
And it will just not be good.
Exactly. Yeah. And you never know, like, yeah, in this case, like, I don't think I would set any of my friends up with this guy because this guy was just annoying and, like, I had it. But, like, you never know, like, maybe a girl has a friend for you. And, oh, this guy also did not offer to walk me home. He didn't offer to drive me home. I wouldn't have gotten to his car, and it was still very early. Like, this date, also, all my friends who I sent my location commented, they're like, your date ended so early, because usually my dates go long. I talk a lot, if you couldn't tell.
And you made me realize another date just based on that. Were you done?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So this guy, we were scheduled to go out. We were set up through, like, one of those matchmakers who I know personally. She kind of said that she spoke to this guy, and this guy seems like a great guy. We were supposed to meet on a Saturday night. And it happened to be that Shabbos, I was spending Shabbos, like, somewhere else within the city. And a really good friend of mine was with me, and she offered to take my bags home. Like, because I wasn't going to go on the date with, like, my weekender, like, my bag from Shabbos. Takes it back, really sweet, and I'm, like, running up the door from where I was staying for Shabbos to get to the date on time. It was all the way downtown, and which is where he wanted to meet, and, like, I, like, was, like, sure, because it was, like, a specific, like, fun activity. We were going to Uncommons. For those who don't know, it's, like, a game cafe, which I wouldn't recommend on a first date because it's not really great to chat, but it's fine. So I get there. Guy's late. He says he's a half an hour late. Then he's an hour late. I think he ended up showing an hour and a half late or something, and I'm just sitting there.
I would have gone home.
Or an hour. I don't remember. He kept saying he was there, but it also took me forever to get there, and I was lazy. So I was like, you know what? I'm already here. He comes, very disheveled looking, very whatever. And, like, I was just, like, not into it. I felt like this was, like, a waste of my time. The date ends at, I think, about midnight or so, just because of how late it was. Maybe it was only, like, a half an hour late. Maybe. I'm probably exaggerating, but this was a long time ago. He just says, see ya, or goodbye, and leaves. Doesn't ask me how I'm getting home. Nothing. It's, like, it's midnight, all the way downtown, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the city, it's not necessarily the safest as a female at that time of night in general in the city, but that particular part of the city, especially to take public transport. like, not a good idea. So I ended up taking an Uber because I didn't really know how to get home and spent, like, a lot of money to get home. And I was very annoyed about the whole situation, but I didn't really have another way to get home. Like, he didn't offer to, like, pay nothing. Like, gentlemen, if you're late and the day ends very late, offer to drive her home. Ask her how she's getting home. You know, make sure she's safe. Because besides the fact that he was late and maybe he was a little disheveled and not for me, and when I mean disheveled, not just appearance, but, like, just personality and everything was, like, a little intense. I think he made a joke about me being his wife or something. Like, it was just a lot.
Yeah.
But, like, even, like, if there were, like, a few things, like, no one's going to recommend you to go out with one of their friends if you don't ask them how they're getting home.
Yeah.
You don't need to take them home.
Especially when you're not by their apartment. If you're by their apartment and they're, like this guy who didn't ask me how I'm getting home, like, the other night, we were 5 blocks away from my apartment, and it was, like, 9:30. Like, it wasn't late.
Right. Also, you just say, oh, like, have a safe, like, way back.
Or even, like, let me know when you get home. Also, like, if a guy, takes me home, I usually will tell him, like, oh, let me know when you get home.
Yeah, for sure.
And, like, I don't know, my previous relationships, they would, like, drive me home. I would, like, wait up until they got home. And, like, I knew that they were home. Like, I care, too, to some extent. But, like, it's just, like, the gentlemanly thing to do. Either walk her home. I have never accepted a guy's offer to pay for my Uber home. But I appreciate the offer. Like, if a guy was like, how are you getting home? Can I Uber you home? I'll usually say no. I'll usually be like, no, it's fine. I can pay for it. Like, I'll Uber myself.
It's a gesture that counts.
But it's the gesture that counts. Also, like, it depends on the situation. Like, I did go out with a guy a couple times, and, like, it was COVID, and I wasn't taking it in public. I would also leave late, and, like, I was always coming to his neighborhood, and, like, he never offered to pay for my Ubers, and it kind of got annoying because, like, it just added up. But we went on a few dates. But, like, a first date, if you offer to pay for my Uber home, I probably won't accept.
Oh.
But I'll think that it's really sweet and really nice that you're trying to, like, make sure I get home safely.
The other end of the spectrum, which you should not do, is I was once on a first date with a guy that I kind of knew I didn't want to go out again. Really just for a lot of different reasons, just not for me, which is okay. You go on a first date. Sometimes you just don't want to go out again. The guy insisted that he was going in the complete opposite direction. And I think back to Long Island even. I was in the city at the time. And he insisted to go on the subway with me and walk me to my door. Wouldn't let me get out of it. Like, I kept saying, like, I could not figure out a way to say no thank you without being rude. So I ended up just getting stuck with him on the subway ride all the way back to my apartment. Which I think is a very
nice gesture.
But take a no. Take a hint.
Yeah, you guys, if a girl says no, it's fine. She can make her own way.
And no means no is for everything.
It's for everything. Gentlemen, that is also a tip of
advice. Even if you're not a gentleman, become one.
Become one. Make sure the girl gets home okay. And you know what? Maybe not everyone's going to be like me. Maybe some girl's going to take you up on your offer to pay for her Uber. But you know what? Then maybe you should have just come to her neighborhood.
You know what? I had a friend once who she was going out with this guy, and, like, I don't know how many dates she went on, where it went, but I do remember this story because the guy, because he was a doctor or lawyer or something, couldn't go out till very late. And he said, oh, I apologize that I can't go out till very late. I'm going to Uber you to me. I guess he didn't want to, like, spend the time. I don't know, but, like, it was very late at night. So he Ubered her to the restaurant and then Ubered her home. She thought it was, like, very gentlemanly, especially because it was very late. And I guess for him to have to, like, take public or Uber all the way up would, like, would take more time than if she met him when he was able to be free.
Yeah. It's all about communication and like what works for people, but
so
always offer.
After all these bad things we're saying about guys, I guess something good to say is I guess a nice dating story, or at least like a good dating idea. Like, I feel like guys always need like dates ideas, and I always remember this guy that I went out with. It was like the third or fourth date. We went out for a little bit. Nice guy, just didn't work out mutually. And I thought it was a really cool idea. We went for pizza. And then afterwards, he had some app that he downloaded. I guess he showed me they charged him whatever, a couple of dollars. And it was a scavenger hunt. So we went to like a specific place in like New York City, like an area, and like we would complete tasks that were scavenger hunt. Like we'd go to this statue, we'd go into this grocery store, whatever it was, and it was just like a very cool idea.
Don't do it on a first date.
No, it was like a third or fourth date. Yeah. I thought it was just a really cool idea of something cool, different, and also like you don't need to spend a lot of money to be memorable.
No, we love creativity and thoughtfulness. And I also had this conversation with someone today. And I'm not going to tell her story because I'm I'm hoping she comes on the podcast to tell you the story herself. But she brought up a situation where, like, when it came down to money and a guy in a different financial position. And, like, guys, we understand that dating is a financial burden. But, like, we're also not asking you to take us to the fanciest restaurants or fancy bars. Like, if you can't afford it, like, take us out for ice cream. Coffee. Like, you don't have to spend a lot of money on a date.
Try to pay with something that's not going to work and then fight it. I guess now going back to when we're talking about money, I think it was the first date I ever went on, and it was this memorable. The guy took me to a Barnes & Noble's with a Starbucks in it, tried to pay with the Starbucks gift card, didn't work because it was Barnes & Noble's, and he tried to fight it.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
No.
Like, it's one thing to try, and if it doesn't work, just give them a credit card.
First date ever wasn't a great experience.
Yeah,
or first, like, dating for a purpose, if that makes sense. Like, when I was looking more for, like, something serious. And then there was this other guy that I went out with where I think it was the second date. We did an activity. We went to do mini golf, and it was, like, a Sunday. So, like, usually Sunday dates are, like, could be an all-day affair. So I went to mini golf, and then he asked if I was hungry. And I think in advance, before we even went to the restaurant, he just kind of asked, I don't know if he asked or he said, but would you mind basically going Dutch? Because he paid for the mini golf, which must have been expensive. And
I feel like that's okay.
And then, like, so we went Dutch for the dinner, which we went to, like, a pizza joint. Like, it wasn't anything fancy. But I felt like that was fine, you know. And also, I was much younger, and I think the guy was, like, I finished school quicker than some of my peers, like college. Yeah. So he was still, I think, a senior in school, which I feel like is totally understandable. But a later date, we went to a restaurant in the area of his school, and he paid with, like, his school CAF card, which I just kind of was like, if you're gonna do it in a way where the girl doesn't know, because I understand that, like, you know, this we went on a bunch of dates, and, like, I get it, like, you know, things cost money, but it doesn't make a girl feel great. But, like, he also, like, wanted specifically to go to this place, like,
I feel like it's okay
to pay with, like, a CAF card.
With a CAF card, yeah. I actually, so a guy who I was dating, it was my idea to go on a date, like, somewhere by where I used to go to school. This was more recent, so I am way out of school, and he's way out of school, and it was my idea to go on the date, and I'm like, and we had already, like, reached the part of our relationship where I'm like, I can pay for this. But I kind of made a comment. I was like, I wish I still had my CAF card. Because we did an activity that I wanted to do around that area. And I'm like, oh, and we can go to this restaurant and, like, eat. And, like, we already talked about it. I'm like, I'm going to pay for it. Like, this was my idea. This is my date. Like, and when you do reach a certain point in a relationship, like, I think a girl should offer to pay. And whatever, we were there. I was paying, and it was already, like, established that I was paying, but I kind of made a joke to him. I was like, I kind of wish I still had my CAF card.
Yeah, but a joke is funny. I feel like if he would have made a joke about it, also the way he did it was just awkward.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I'm in a much different, like, thought process when it comes to dating and different things than I was when I was younger.
Yeah, I think I do too, but I don't know. Just, guys, pay on a first date. If it's a multi-parter, if it turns into a multi-parter first date, you should always plan to pay for it. But, like, let's say you go, you end up going somewhere else and getting drinks. Like, that's when I'll offer to pay. Like, if we go to another place, I'm not expecting him to pay for all of these things, especially if it's spontaneous. So, like, let's say you're having a nice time, but you want to move to a different location. And, right, like, there's another round of drinks or food or something, like, that's usually what I'll offer.
Organic, like, things that, like, when you're having a good time and the date just kind of continues, you shouldn't, like, not want to do it from a financial part. Like, I know it has nothing to do with the date, but, like, a really fun day that Rachel and I had was, like, we had one thing we were planning on doing, and we spiraled, and we did so many things on a Sunday. which does require more money. But it was just a lot of fun, and it was very organic, just how things came about. And I feel like you shouldn't be afraid to do these things. And, like, if you are, like, you know, it is a financial burden. Like, if you're having a really good time, you could say, hey, I would love to continue this. You know, I see this over here. Would you want to do it? But would you mind, like, the idea of, like, going Dutch? Or, you know. And I also think it's totally okay to, you know, a few dates in, 5 or 6, like, kind of tell the girl, like, oh, would you want to maybe plan a date? And, like, usually we'll make it clear, but a lot of times when it's the girl's turn to plan a date,
like, she wants to, she's excited.
Right, but she's usually paying for it also. But, like, I do think that guys should not be expected to always pay. I think the first to 3 dates is usually, like, until the girl offers.
Start offering. And, like, maybe if you've ever gone, if you're listening to this and you've gone on a date with me and I offered to pay, it was probably fake. Unless it was, like, third date and after.
Oh, so guys, you have to do the dance. Not everyone knows this, but there's, like, an etiquette for accepting payment. Like, for you who do or don't know, I don't know if Rachel knows what I'm talking about, but, like, when a girl offers to pay, you don't accept right away. You have to say, no, you don't have to. And then if the girl says it again, that means that it's usually a real commitment that she would do it, and then you say yes. But never accept the girl's payment the first time, because then it comes off a little rushed. And maybe some of you will be rolling your eyes at me.
Unless it was previously discussed, and, like, you're dating.
But I'm saying organically on the date, the girl says, oh, I would pay. Don't just automatically take it. And maybe some people will think that, like, I'm old-fashioned or I'm playing games, but it's, like, an etiquette. I think
try not to offer, even.
Oh. Well, even, my dad, like, when we go out to dinner with, like, my dad and my grandpa.
Oh, I do not offer.
You have to do, like, the game. No, I don't offer, but I'm saying my dad does the game with my grandpa.
Oh, I don't know. If I go anywhere with my parents, I expect them to pay.
Oh, no, but you're saying, would your parents expect their parents to pay?
Not necessarily.
That's what I'm saying. That
depends.
Wasn't me.
Maybe, like, back in the day, yes, but
I'm saying I see my dad and my grandpa play the game.
But yeah, it's actually really funny. I'll tell this one last funny story in regards to paying, and then I'm going to ask Shaina our final questions. So I told you how I was in a relationship, and he never let me pay. Ever. Sometimes occasionally, like, we would go out to dinner and then go to drinks after, and then he would, like, humor me and let me pay for the drinks. He would never let me pay. Like, one time I went to go put my credit card in, he took my credit card, and he wouldn't give it back until after, like, he signed the check. And, like, we dated for months.
Yeah, but don't let finances also, I feel like the more you get into,
you can get,
like,
creative.
Dating, like, you know, figure it out. And also don't let, like, finances also get into arguments with a significant other. Like, for Rachel's point, like, find a common ground and figure it out. Because also, guys, if the girl really wants to, but if the girl really wants to pay, you should give her the opportunity, even if you're old-fashioned. And maybe if it's very hard for you to let her pay for dinner, let her pay for her own ticket, or, you know, if you're going somewhere, or, you know, just figure out a way, because everyone should feel comfortable and happy.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I feel like we've been doing this the whole time, but Shaina, do you have any parting words of dating advice to give our listeners? Even though we've literally just, like, spent a long time giving them advice, but is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to give as advice?
Yeah, I feel like for people who've been dating for years and, like, you know, or if you're newly starting to date and you're looking for something maybe more real or serious, don't let little things get in the way of, like, your own head. Like, you know, I feel like there are some things that are really important and some things aren't. So, you know, reflect and, like, really figure out what, like, the key things are, and everything else should really be negotiable, and really just try to have a good time, have fun with it. But I also think that you should be selective, ladies and gentlemen, but not too picky, because if you keep going out and out with the wrong type of people, you're gonna get, like, just, like, stuck, or you'll have really great stories, like, and hence the podcast. But I think that you just need to have fun with dating and not really take it too seriously, and just, like, you know, if you put too much pressure on yourself, then it's just not fun.
Yeah. Okay, and then one last just fun thing to do. I told you guys my Real Housewives tagline, because, like, Real Housewives reality TV is my life. I actually know this podcast is my life and my day job and my friends, and I have a lot of things going on in life, but I love reality TV.
Rachel has a lot of life.
I have a lot of life. I love reality TV, so I thought it would be fun for our guests, just like a fun way to get to know them, to ask them their Real Housewives tagline. Just to remind you what mine is, reality TV is my calling, but until I get there, I have this podcast. So, Shaina, what would your Real Housewives tagline be?
Okay, Rachel is convinced I say this a lot, so I guess it's my tagline, which is, you know me, my casual is your fancy.
Yeah, because she's just very into fashion, and like she'll call me and be like, "What are you wearing?" Like when we go to an event or something, and I'm like, "I don't even know why you're asking me," because like we dress very differently.
But I like to
Meaning,
make sure
she's always very put together and dressed
Thank
up.
you.
I look like a hot mess half the time, but in the best way possible.
you are a hot mess.
I am. Right now, I'm legitimately a hot mess. I spent my whole day walking around. I rushed home, grocery shopped, like got my like meal prep together, and then I'm over here.
You do not look like a hot mess, I would say that.
Right now?
No.
Oh, my hair's like everywhere.
I think it's cute, though.
Oh, thanks. Because I like had it down, and now it's like up.
Yeah, but I always like your creativity with the hairpin.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, guys, Rachel, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a guest on my podcast. And I hope all of you enjoyed listening to me and Shaina. Remember to go back, listen to the other episodes. Stay tuned for further episodes. You won't regret it because this podcast is going to be awesome and hilarious and anything you ever needed in your life. And remember to like us, follow us, subscribe, rate, review. I don't know how it works, but just do it. And as always, like if you want to date me or anyone who I have on my podcast, anyone mentioned, you can go ahead and slide into those DMs. You can send an email. I'll try to hook you up. So, and remember my 3 rules for dating, which maybe we'll expand on this further, but right for now I have my 3 rules for dating. If he likes you, you'll know. If he doesn't, you'll be confused. If he wants to, he will, and only reciprocate. Bye, everybody.
Bye.